It was a beautiful day in early summer, the sun was shining, and the birds were chirping. The world was going about its daily routine, unaware of the impending doom that was looming in the sky. A meteor was headed straight for Earth. The meteor had been spotted months ago, and astronomers had been tracking it ever since. As it grew closer, panic began to set in. Governments around the world started preparing for the worst. People were advised to stock up on food and water, and emergency shelters were set up in case the worst should happen. Despite the impending disaster, life continued as usual for many people. They went to work, they went to school, they enjoyed time with family and friends. But beneath the surface, there was a growing sense of unease. Everyone knew that the meteor was getting closer, and the possibility of it striking the planet was very real. As the days passed, tension began to mount. The media was reporting on the situation non-stop, and people couldn't escape the constant barrage of news about the meteor. It was all anyone could talk about. Social media was abuzz with theories and speculation, and there was a sense of collective dread that hung in the air. Despite the fear and uncertainty, there were still moments of beauty and hope. People came together to support each other, to offer words of encouragement and comfort. There were acts of kindness and selflessness, as people worked to help those who were most vulnerable. But as the meteor grew ever closer, the sense of unease began to give way to panic. People rushed to stores to buy supplies, creating long lines and shortages. Traffic jams snarled the streets as people tried to flee the cities, desperate to get away from the impact zone. The military was called in to help with the evacuation effort, and they worked tirelessly to get as many people out of harm's way as possible. But despite their best efforts, there were simply too many people to save. And so, as the meteor hurtled towards Earth, the world held its breath and waited for impact. It was the calm before the storm, the final moments before everything changed forever. As the world braced itself for impact, a sinister plot was brewing in the shadows. A group of military scientists had uncovered evidence that the meteor was not a natural occurrence, but rather the result of an alien attack. The evidence was sketchy at first, but as the scientists delved deeper into their research, they found a trail of clues that led them to a shocking discovery. The aliens had been planning the attack for years. The scientists' findings were met with skepticism at first. Many people believed that the meteor was simply a natural occurrence, and that there was no evidence to suggest otherwise. But as more and more evidence came to light, the truth began to emerge. The aliens had been monitoring Earth for years, studying our weaknesses and vulnerabilities. They had infiltrated our governments and our militaries, manipulating events from behind the scenes. And now, with the meteor on a collision course with Earth, they were poised to strike. The scientists knew that time was running out. They needed to act fast if they were going to stop the aliens and save humanity. They reached out to their colleagues around the world, sharing their findings and urging them to take action. At first, their efforts were met with resistance. The governments of many countries were hesitant to act on the evidence, fearing that it might be a hoax or a mistake. But as the threat of the meteor grew ever closer, more and more people began to take the scientists' warnings seriously. The military began to mobilize, preparing for a potential attack. They worked tirelessly to gather as much information as they could about the aliens and their plans, searching for any weaknesses they could exploit. As the hours ticked by, tensions rose to a fever pitch. The world was on the brink of war, with humans and aliens locked in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and it was unclear who would emerge victorious. And then, with a deafening roar, the meteor struck Earth. The impact was catastrophic, unleashing a wave of destruction that shook the planet to its core. Buildings crumbled, streets were torn apart, and countless lives were lost in an instant. But even as the world reeled from the impact, the military continued to fight. They knew that the aliens were still out there, waiting to strike. And so they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth and save humanity from certain doom. In the aftermath of the meteor strike, the world was plunged into chaos. Survivors struggled to find food and shelter, while the military worked tirelessly to restore order and provide aid to those in need. But even as the world tried to pick up the pieces, a new threat emerged. The aliens had finally revealed themselves, launching a full-scale invasion of Earth. The first attacks were swift and brutal. Alien spacecraft swooped down from the skies, unleashing devastating weapons on cities and military installations. The human forces were caught off guard, and many were quickly overwhelmed. But the military was not so easily defeated. They had been preparing for this moment for months, studying the aliens' tactics and weaknesses. They had developed advanced weapons and strategies, designed specifically to counter the alien threat. As the battles raged on, it became clear that the fight for survival would be a long and brutal one. The humans and aliens were evenly matched, each side trading blow for blow in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The fighting was intense and relentless, with both sides taking heavy losses. The human forces fought bravely, but they were up against a formidable foe. The aliens were ruthless and merciless, showing no mercy to their human opponents. But the humans were not without their own strengths. They were resourceful and resilient, using their ingenuity to create weapons and strategies that would give them an edge in battle. They worked together, pooling their resources and sharing their knowledge in a desperate bid to turn the tide of the war. The battles were fought on land, in the air, and in space. The human forces launched daring raids on alien bases, while the aliens unleashed their deadliest weapons on human cities. The world was a battleground, and there was no safe place to hide. Despite the odds against them, the humans refused to give up. They fought on, determined to protect their planet and their way of life. The stakes were high, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. As the war continued, it became clear that it would be a long and grueling struggle. The humans and aliens were evenly matched, and victory seemed uncertain. But one thing was certain: the battle for survival had just begun, and it would be fought with all the strength and determination that humanity could muster. The war against the aliens had been raging for weeks, and it seemed that neither side was gaining the upper hand. The humans were fighting with all their might, but they were still struggling to fend off the relentless attacks of the alien invaders. It was clear that something needed to change if the humans were going to win the war. They needed a new strategy, a way to turn the tables on their foes and gain the advantage. And so, a desperate plan was hatched. The humans would launch a counterattack, striking at the heart of the alien forces and crippling their ability to wage war. The plan was risky and dangerous, but it was the only hope the humans had. They knew that if they could succeed, they could turn the tide of the war and win the battle for survival. The human forces worked tirelessly to prepare for the counterattack. They studied maps and schematics, planning out every detail of the mission. They gathered weapons and supplies, and trained relentlessly to hone their skills and prepare for the battle to come. As the day of the mission approached, tensions were high. The stakes were high, and failure was not an option. The human forces knew that they were taking a huge risk, but they were willing to do whatever it took to save their planet and their people. And so, they launched the attack. The human forces moved quickly and quietly, using their stealth and skill to evade the alien defenses. They struck with precision, hitting key targets and crippling the alien war machine. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides taking heavy losses. But the humans fought with a fierce determination, spurred on by the knowledge that the fate of their world was at stake. In the end, the human counterattack was a success. They had dealt a devastating blow to the alien forces, crippling their ability to wage war and giving the humans a much-needed advantage. But the victory was short-lived. The aliens were not ones to give up easily, and they soon regrouped and launched a fierce counterattack of their own. The fighting continued, with both sides locked in a deadly struggle for survival. The humans fought with all their might, using every weapon and strategy at their disposal to fend off the alien invaders. It was clear that the war was far from over, and that the humans would need to continue to fight with all their strength and determination if they were going to emerge victorious. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and there was no room for error. As the war raged on, the humans began to uncover the truth behind the alien invasion. It was a shocking revelation, one that would change the course of the war and shake the very foundations of humanity. The military had intercepted communications between the alien leaders, revealing that the invasion was not a random act of aggression, but a carefully orchestrated plot to destroy mankind. The aliens had been studying Earth for years, learning about human society and culture, and they had determined that the planet was a threat to their own way of life. The aliens had chosen to launch the invasion while the world was distracted by the threat of the meteor strike, hoping to catch the humans off guard and achieve a swift victory. But they had not counted on the humans' resilience and determination to fight back. The revelation of the alien plot was a devastating blow to humanity. They had been fighting for survival, but now they were fighting for their very existence. As the humans struggled to come to terms with the betrayal, a new sense of purpose began to emerge. They were no longer just fighting to survive, but to protect their planet and their way of life from those who would seek to destroy it. The revelation also brought a new urgency to the war effort. The humans knew that they needed to strike back hard and fast if they were going to have any chance of stopping the alien invasion. The military quickly devised a new plan of attack, one that would target the alien leaders and their most powerful weapons. It was a risky plan, but it was the only hope the humans had. The human forces launched a daring raid on an alien stronghold, fighting their way through the alien defenses to reach the heart of the base. They were met with fierce resistance, but they fought on, determined to achieve their objective. In the end, the mission was a success. The human forces had destroyed the alien leaders and their most powerful weapons, crippling the alien war machine and giving the humans a significant advantage in the war. But the victory came at a heavy cost. Many lives had been lost in the battle, and the humans knew that the war was far from over. The aliens would not give up easily, and they would continue to fight until their dying breath. As the war continued, the humans would need to remain vigilant and determined. They had uncovered the truth behind the invasion, but they knew that they were still up against a formidable foe. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and the struggle for survival would continue. The war had been raging for months, and the planet had been left in ruins. The once thriving cities were now nothing but rubble and ash, and the landscape was scarred by the relentless fighting. The humans had fought with all their might, but they were now on the brink of defeat. The alien forces had proven to be more powerful and resilient than anyone had imagined, and the humans were running out of options. As the final battle loomed, the humans knew that this was their last stand. They had to win this battle, or all would be lost. They had gathered their forces, both human and alien, for one final assault. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides fighting with everything they had. The humans knew that this was their last chance, and they fought with a desperation born of the knowledge that failure would mean the end of everything they had ever known. As the battle raged on, the humans began to gain the upper hand. They had learned from their previous battles and had developed new tactics to defeat the alien forces. But the aliens were not ones to give up easily, and they fought back with a ferocity that was unmatched. The battle was long and grueling, with no clear winner in sight. As the hours wore on, the humans began to feel a glimmer of hope. They had managed to push back the alien forces, and it seemed that victory was within their grasp. And then, suddenly, everything changed. The sky above them began to glow, and a massive object began to descend towards the planet. It was the meteor, the one that had threatened to destroy the planet so many months ago. The humans and aliens looked up in horror as the meteor hurtled towards them. There was no time to react, no time to evacuate. It seemed that all was lost. But then, something miraculous happened. The meteor suddenly changed course, veering away from the planet and hurtling towards the alien world instead. The humans watched in awe as the meteor crashed into the alien planet, destroying everything in its path. The alien forces were caught off guard, and the humans seized the opportunity to launch a final assault. The battle was short but intense, with the humans and aliens fighting side by side against the common enemy. In the end, the humans emerged victorious, their planet saved from destruction and their enemy defeated. The aftermath of the war was a time of great rebuilding and healing for the human race. They had emerged from the war battered and bruised, but they were still standing. And they had learned some valuable lessons along the way. They had learned that sometimes, the greatest enemy was not the one they could see, but the one they couldn't. They had learned that sometimes, the only way to survive was to stand together, even with those they had once seen as their enemies. And most of all, they had learned that no matter how dark things may seem, there was always hope. Hope for a better future, hope for a better tomorrow, hope that would keep them going no matter what challenges they might face.